Good evening, good evening. You see our new intro. Do you like that? You're welcome. No big deal. My name is James. As you know, I am the nicest person on UPR Entertainment. I just wanted to highlight that. Some quick points that I wanted to go over yesterday's episode. I hope you watched it. Deadpool is getting a lot of views. You need to be a part of that. One, Chris goes off camera, then he sneezes with the audio on. I was confused. Chrissy, who's colorblind, recast Prison Bay with Ajax. I don't know where she's going. Then she starts talking about bisexuality. And then somebody named Pull Your Meat or Pull Urine. He was drinking on air some sky blue vodka. It was really weird. Anyway, tonight is Interview with the Vampire. Let's start the show. I'm going to start with the person who picked this movie. I'm putting him up first, the executive consultant. Sir, how are you doing?
You know, I was wondering why I didn't get chewed out by the fact that I actually forgot to hit the mute button when I was trying to sneeze. And then pointed it out. Just pointed it out, man.
No, listen, it's a live show. When I'm not on the show, I still watch, and I appreciate the different things because it makes it human. You know, It's a real thing. So I had to point it out.
I strive very hard to be human.
That's right. Whereas I am sadly too human. Here we have C the Superior in full blackface. C, how are you doing?
Hi.
She's on the wrong movie.
No, actually, I feel like we should have did this week during Pride Week because yes, Deadpool is bisexual. What? And
where are you going? Where are you going, Chris?
As is Lestat and Louie. I feel like this was the great.
I still have to disagree with that. I saw no evidence to support.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a big controversy, not controversy, but a big contention because Chris doesn't feel that this movie has any undertones as far as homosexuality.
That's not true. That's not true anymore. I did see undertones, but they weren't coming from the stop. Definitely. Okay. You know, Louie maybe a little bit, but from Antonio Banderas' character, all over.
Without question.
There was nothing. He
Louie and Lestat were lovers.
Also, those fingernails had me believing somebody was doing that pure white because those fingernails were super long. But Chrissy likes to point out that homosexuality. She doesn't see it in Twilight in any of those movies, but tonight she'll be in full effect. I'm surprised she's not on camera because I know she's full grin.
We'll bring that into the discussion later in the evening.
As I said, tonight is Chris's pick in our Thursday night movies, Interview with the Vampire. I'm going to read the synopsis, then I'm going to let him take it over and tell us why he picked it. We're going to jump to our first segment, as Rashad says hello, which is best of worst of. Here we go. Through the prism of a recorded interview, we follow the life of a 200-year-old immortal from New Orleans to Paris as he recounts to his disillusionment with his former life and the horrors he uncovered in his new one. And that essentially is a synopsis for Interview with the Vampire. Chris Harris says hello. Rashad says humanity is overrated. I've said this many times, Rashad. I agree with you, twin. But Chris, tell us, why did you pick Interview with the Vampire?
All right, so as I said many times on this episode, I am from the great tri-state area of the DMV. That's Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. In the mid-'90s, we had something called cable. Some people still have it. We had something called cable. When a movie came out of the box office, they used to get on these channels we call pay-per-view, right? If you grew up in the hood, not saying that I know what that is, but if you grew up in the hood, you had something called the scrambler box, right? That you put on it. When I had that scrambler box, I remember vividly watching this movie because it was played over and over on the one station that we had. So I remember watching Interview with a Vampire quite often, and I liked the movie. So that's really why I said, hey, I've watched it a while, and I remember it being really mesmerizing. And I see because spoiler alert, Tom Cruise steals every scene he is in this movie. Okay, so that's why I picked Interview with a Vampire.
Now let me just further that. Let me elaborate the question. Why Interview with the Vampire, a vampire film, obviously? Why is that over, or do you want to say this for final thoughts? Why that over any other vampire film?
Well, vampires actually, when I was a child, of course, not so much now, I'm a grown man, Chris. But when I was a child, was one of the scariest fictional characters out there for me.
Okay.
I was really afraid of vampires, but for some reason, besides Dracula Dead and Loving and for comedic purposes, I really was like, okay, this movie doesn't scare me as much. The world itself is still very, very scary. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, it wasn't like, Dracula. And,
that's interesting.
stuff like that. So I was able to watch it and actually get involved with the story. Now, just like I talk about Married with Children, great comedy, we're going to do a series on that soon. But as I talk about Married with Children, other things that you used to watch when you were a child and you watch it as an adult, you're like, wow, why was I watching it? I didn't get this, I didn't get this, I didn't get this, I didn't get this, I didn't get this. So it was interesting seeing it through 30 plus somebody's eyes as opposed to when I was 11 years old watching this movie for the first time.
Very rational. Do you want to start off in best of worst of, or you want to?
Sure. I'll start off with best of worst stuff. Here was my best of scene. All right, and this is going to be a little bit of a quote, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to quote from one of my favorite movies: "Theatricality and deception are powerful agents. You must make yourself more than a man in the eye of your opponents." Mm-hmm. When Lestat drank blood that was dead and was getting put on fire, whatever the hell happened to him, he got put in the swamp with alligators and stuff like that. Then he appeared back at home. He showed them that he was still alive. And then when they ran into another room, he's playing the piano. If you want to talk about dramatic and theatric, Lestat was teaching a class in the college. All right, he was a professor, Xavier, pick notes. He was doing his damn business. So I love that scene. I just thought it was really, really enticing and really, really captivating. What's up, Eric? The other thing I want to talk about actually was the best scene, but I'll talk more about that with my quotes because I really like that scene. So I'll talk more about that quote. As far as the worst scene, there wasn't really too many worst scenes I could say in this movie. As somebody who has two daughters, sometimes seeing a father and a grown girl. Now, I won't say that she's grown because obviously she's over like 60 at this time and stuff like that. But seeing her climbing the coffin with her father and kissing him, that's a little uncomfortable for me at times. But it's that's me nitpicking. You know, I wouldn't do that, but I don't blame necessarily fathers who don't do that, who do that. And of course, there's nothing sexual behind it. So that was a little uncomfortable for me, and that whole dynamic there was a little bit. Best vampire movie, in my opinion, was Interview with a Vampire. Now it's Dracula Dead and Loving It, but that's just because it's Liam Neeson, and I'm not Liam Neeson. It's Leslie somebody. Oh God, what's his name? Anyway, and he's just comedy to me. So anyway, that's my best of worst of. It was really quick, and let's go to See the Superior.
My best of. He actually took one of my best of course, with Lestat. He's my favorite character from the books and everything. He's just so melodramatic, and I love that about him sometimes. And the fact that he was so theatrical, he had to come back from the dead looking like death itself, playing the piano because he needed his grand entrance. I love that about Lestat. That's one of my favorite scenes. My other favorite scene is when Claudia became more self-aware and she, had that, I guess you can call it a tantrum, or like, she started to cut off her hair and realizing after that it grows back instantly almost. She can't change, and which is her dilemma. This is what she's hating about herself as she's growing older in this child body. She hates the fact that she can't change. But her acting in this movie was really good for her to be so at such a young age. So I would say that was probably my favorite scene. Those are my two favorite scenes. My least favorite scene. Oh, go ahead.
No. I'm sorry. I'm hearing it as if it's your worst because I wanted to agree with both of the two best that both of y'all put up so far.
Okay. My least favorite scene was the scene, and this is kind of nitpicky again. There was a scene after, I believe it was after Louie changed the woman for Claudia so she can have someone in his absence because Claudia believes that he's going to abandon her. They're on the balcony. He's laying down on the balcony rail. And the way he speaks was so like groggy and like, I just feel like the delivery of it was kind of off for the scene. He was just very, we're even now or something. It was just, I didn't like that part. So that would be my worst scene.
Would you remind me of something? So thank you.
I'm sorry?
No, I'm saying that C reminded me of something. I had to change my name.
Oh.
This is one of my only times I was actually going to change my name. But if Brad Pitt actually raised his voice once in this movie, I'll tell everybody that his master's the devil. Like he just whispered throughout this whole movie.
I wonder if they had trouble speaking with their teeth because there's some scenes where you see even the delivery. I think they modified it because the teeth are not like typical vampire. It's like the whole frontals are like extra fangy. You know what I mean? And so it obviously changes the way that you speak and your diction and everything like that. So when Louie is sitting there and he's talking about the scene that Chrissy is talking about, he's saying, me turning that woman was the last breath of my humanity. We're even now. For taking your childhood, your whole maturity away from you, we're even now. I'm dead on the inside. So I didn't mind it necessarily, but I understand why she said that, because as Chris says, he's literally whispering, and it's kind of like stilted, even with Lestat, in their delivery, especially with Antonio Banderas. I had to really go over and hear when
because his accent was strong with this one.
Yeah, and to really understand what he was saying. But once you got used to it, it worked. But it was kind of stilting. It was, what's that country movie that we watched?
Oh God,
with
the devil all the time.
Yeah.
Logan. Oh,
not Logan. I'm talking about the Spider-Man movie. The you know what I'm talking about.
I thought you were talking about Logan, a sad Western.
No, the one with the pastor in the country in like West Virginia or something like that, Ohio.
I got you. Okay.
Okay.
You say Western, I think Logan.
Oh,
it's going to be it. Now, you want to see some crying next week between Logan and Notebook? You're going to see a lot of people crying. One is Wolverine, two is me. It's going to be a lot of crying coming out.
I will be crying during the Notebook, watching it and for the review.
Oh my gosh,
they haven't seen.
I tried so hard. I asked C for a cash app this morning. I was trying to grease some palms to get out of this. It's not working. I'm sorry, James. Your turn.
Some of my best of. I have a lot, really. I don't really have, as my other co-hosts are saying, a lot of bad scenes. It's more of something that just irks me. I'll start with that since I only have one. Tandy Newton is in this. She's a phenomenal actress. I'm not saying that to buffer rather what I'm about to say about this, because obviously it's the script. But at this point, the enslaved people on the plantation, because Louie owns the plantation, he has enslaved people there. They know that that Lestat and Louie haven't been eating, right? They haven't been drinking anything. They only come out at night, and they're barely on the property. So you see them, and they're performing African magic, and they're trying to ward off what they believe, obviously, to be evil spirits, right? And Tandy Newton, she plays a house slave, and she's collecting the plates, and it's almost as if, and I don't know if this is a cut scene, she has some kind of sexual relationship with Louie, and she's like begging him, like, master, you don't come out to the slave quarters anymore. You barely eat. Is there anything I could do for you? And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, you're not free. And this man possibly is a demon, as far as you know. What's the concern? Are they right about house slaves? And I had to catch myself. But it was too much fawning for me. And watching it now at my age, couldn't do it. But again, that's in the script. I don't blame Tandy Newton. She delivered it believably. But I was like, is this supposed to be Sally Hemings? What's going on? I was very confused. Let's jump to the things I did like. It's a lot of them. They already mentioned two of them, so I won't go over that. Just as a side note, there's a scene when Louie is in Paris with Claudia, and they're walking into the opera to this performance of the vampires in Paris, right? And he's wearing this fur overcoat. Now, the style is like 1900 or something like that. It looks like something Ron Weasley would wear, but this looks like it looked like it was supposed to look. It was fly as hell. I love that jacket. I said I would want to rock that jacket. It just was a cool scene, and I just wanted to say that. Louis' tears, there's a scene when he's crying in front of the interviewer, right? And then conversely with that is his revenge on the vampires in Paris who killed Claudia and the other woman. I forget her name, forgive me. I just love that because, again, as Chris says, Louis whispers his dialogue throughout the whole. He's very soft spoken, right? And it's not really showing any passion one way or another. We see outbursts of his anger or his rage in the storytelling, but we never see that in modern day. And to see him cry, and again, it's like 1 or 2 teardrops, and that's it. Now I'll get more into that into quotes, but it was just a beautifully done scene. And again, the juxtaposition of that is when we see his vengeance, his rage, his revenge on the vampires, and how he goes about to get that revenge. It's just a great scene. It's shot beautifully. I really, really do like that.
You know what? They in the books, I believe it's been a couple years since I read it, but they cry blood in the books, and I wonder why they changed it
Mm.
in the movie. If it was just something that they couldn't do at the time, or
That would be in keeping too, also with True Blood.
mm-hmm.
How they bleed blood, how they cry blood.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about Louie's last sunrise. Again, talking about beautiful scenes. I think this movie is shot beautifully. In the cemetery, there's a shot, and he's looking at his last sunrise and sunset, and he's waiting for Lestat to show up. And then a couple of scenes before that is when he's about to be killed by the pimp, and Louie kills them, the pimp and the prostitute, and he starts to drink from Louie, and he's flying up in the air slowly. As they explain in this movie, every vampire has a different gift, and you get stronger as you get older. You see this certain kind of mythology, certain rules that this one keeps to that you see in other. We just talked about that in True Blood. They do the same thing as well. And he's taking them up. And if you look on Louie's face, it's almost like a pleasurable experience. In my notes, I write it down as an orgasmic experience for him, but it's also fear, because realize that he is feeling his blood being drained out of him. And that's what Lestat essentially says. And we see that again, that ecstasy and the people that Lestat feeds from, I surmise that he's gotten so good at it and so skilled, as he says to Claudia, over time, you'll learn to extend it so you don't kill them so quickly. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like a pleasurable experience. And even though he hunts humans, because that's what vampires do, there's an elegance to it, the way that Lestat does it. If even in his mind he considers himself to be an upperclassman, a nobility or something like that, it's more of a seduction with him. Whereas Louie, he'll just drain the person dry, as does Claudia. So I thought that was a really interesting thing. And then lastly, I'll end on this, or two more things. When he meets Santiago in Paris, they have sort of, I assume, is a vampire introduction. I'll let Chris explain that. If they go into that further in the book, I don't know. And they sort of do these different movements, and Louie is realizing this person is in fact a vampire, and no words are being spoken. Mm-hmm. Right? I just thought that was very cool, and it made me want to read the book to know if that was a thing, if that's how vampires introduce themselves, if this is something that Lestat taught him. And lastly, it's in the end of the movie, or towards the end, when Louie and Lestat reunite back in New Orleans in 1988, and we see that now the student has become the world-traveled teacher, and Lestat the pupil, in that he has almost remained kind of like a wild animal ever since that scene that Chris talked about when he was poisoned and he was brought back from the animals in the bayou. So I thought that was really, really effective. And that's my best and worst stuff.
Very nice. Beautifully said. I do like a couple of points that you made. I can't remember whether or not that other vampire that he meets, I can't even remember him in the books, honestly. It's like, I'm telling you, it's been like a good 15 years probably since I read this book. But can I remember? I don't think that was something that's done between other like vampires. I think it was just with this one specific vampire that maybe they had like that weird introduction. Oh, okay. But Louie, as far as him being soft-spoken and all that, that's exactly how he was in the book. He was very depressed. Like, he was very emo. He was an emo vampire. He didn't want to be a vampire. And it was weird because it in later books, it kind of like switched roles. We didn't really see so much of Louie, but Lestat went through like these whole shifts of personality. Like it was really interesting in the books. But
is that how what they kind of show in what's the Queen of the Damned?
Queen of the Damned, it was
how he's like a rocker and all of that.
Yeah, he went to sleep for years, and the only thing that woke him up from his sleep was the rock music that he heard. I think he mostly went through his change in Tales of the Body Thief when he was transported into another body, as the title kind of entails. But he kind of I guess has like this reawakening of humanity in himself because he's transferred into a human body. So he isn't as like this flamboyant, very confident character that he is through the other books. He's a little bit more questioning of his past and stuff like that. But anyway, onto this movie.
And do they ever say, just as a curiosity, do they ever say who turned Lestat?
Lestat was turned. Lestat was turned by an older vampire, and he was kind of like I want to say he was kidnapped into it because when he was younger, he was practicing to be like a priest or some kind of religious person.
Mm-hmm.
And who was I'll have to look it up again, but I know it wasn't like someone who stayed around him long. It was a very powerful vampire. He had him for like one night and then he disappeared.
Gotcha. And he just turned him. He doesn't even know why he turned him. He just turned him.
Yeah, doesn't even know why.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the first segment, best of worst of. We're going to go to a commercial break really quick, come back, and we'll talk about our quotes.
I would keep myself. I would find a way.
Logan, you still have time.
All right. So, as we were talking about earlier in this episode, we will be talking about Logan later on next week. So, if you enjoy a good cry, join us for that film.
Mm-hmm.
But we will be talking about and continue our conversation about Interview with the Vampire. And we'll be going into quotables.
Right? All right. I have actually James' best amount of quotables. So, I actually want to volunteer to go first. Because I want to sound like I'm professional, I decided to do a Vic. And
shout out to
Vic. That's right. That's right. So here we go. I challenged my teammates earlier by saying, please pick out the ones that best sound like Chris. Here's a few. Not all of the one I'm going to put sounds like Chris. I assume I need no introduction. Let's stop. That is at the end. That was also a favorite scene of mine when Christian Slater, don't know his character's name, he's annoying, but it was in the car. Yeah, thank you. Listening to the tape, thinking, oh, I just got big bucks. Oh, yeah. Vampire didn't kill me, but still, whatever. And then Lestat, who must be, still stalking, grabs him, lets him know, like, hey, you've heard all about me, mofo. I don't have to tell you who I am. Bite. I thought that was great. And then follow up immediately after that with the, don't be afraid. I'm going to give you the choice I never had. This is a quote, low-key, that I have said so many times throughout 20-some-odd years of living. I say this a lot, even if it makes no sense of why I'm saying it. I've just always liked how Tom Cruise said this quote. Pause. It was a little bit seductive, so I like it. I'm a seductive person, so I like that quote. Okay, and I liked how he said it. Here's another one for you. This is from my favorite scene, right? Ask the alligator, his blood helped. I can't say it so like he did it so well, like it was so mesmerizing, seductive. I love it. Ask the alligator, his blood helped. Then on the diet of the blood of snakes, toads, and all the putrid life of the Mississippi, slowly Lestat became something like himself again. And it's so chilling. Claudia, you've been a very, very naughty little girl.
It's and then the piano that helped deliver the lines.
And that's why I actually was going to download it and put it in the videos because it was so good. It is definitely up there on one of my top 20 scenes movies of all time. That's a lot. All right, because it was such a great delivery of that. So I love that. And then this last one is another one that I've been saying so much. And actually, this is the line that actually got me to watch this movie because truth be told, like I said, this was a scrambler. And I saw the end of it before I saw anything else. And the end is when he grabbed the guy, bit his neck, and he said, oh, Louie, 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 still whining Louie. Have you heard enough? I had to listen to that for centuries. Oh my God. I was like, I got to watch this movie because I completely understand what you mean by that. How many people you know whining for minutes, days, hours, years? I'm like, oh my God, you still on that? And when you watch this movie, that's what Brad Pitt's character does the whole movie. He whines and he cries the whole movie. He was so droll. I'm like, all right, bro, you got to let it go at this point, okay? You signed up for it. This is life. And you crying about it ain't going to fix anything. So when he said it, once again, the delivery of Tom Cruise with this, with that still whining Louie, felt him. That's my quotes.
Nice.
Chris, you want to go or you want me to go?
I'll go because I only have two. But
Okay.
now that I think about it, I feel like when Louis was turned, he was in this state of depression.
Yeah, his
So,
wife had just passed with their child like less
uh-huh.
than 6 months ago.
Yeah, so it's like it's not necessarily the vampirism that made him depressed. He was always that way, or at least when he was turned, he was that way.
Yeah.
So I think they mentioned something about how it like heightens emotions and stuff like that. So that's why he's just so kind of dull and depressed throughout the whole movie, because that's how he was when he was turned. But speaking of that, one of my quotes from the film was this right here. It's delivered by Lestat. He says, "I've drained you to the point of death. And if I leave you here now, you will die, or you can be young forever. Will you come with me? Yes or no?" And Brad Pitt, who's sitting there dying, mumbles yes. And I thought that was interesting because, again, when we're introduced to him, he's begging for death. He's looking for death at every corner because he's depressed. But when he's offered the chance of death, you see he has this will to live because he chose this life, because he didn't truly want to die. But I thought that was interesting. I like that quote. And also, okay, this one's delivered from Claudia. And I love this quote because it's very much the oomph she gave behind it. I said, yes, girl, you deliver those lines. And she said, "You haven't tears enough for what you've done to me." And I said, yes, tell him. So that was another quote. I thought she did phenomenal in this movie. And I just love that quote from her.
Okay. I have a sort of a piggyback one to as my quote to the first one that Chrissy gave, but I'll just run down them. I got a bunch of them, as you know. This is Louie talking to Malloy at the beginning of the movie. He's beginning to tell a story, and he goes, "We can't begin this way. Let me turn on the light." And Christian Slater's character goes, "I thought vampires didn't like the light." And Louis goes, he whispers it, but he goes, "We love it." And it's such a small thing to say, but obviously in the whole mythos, it will make sense that they would love that the most because they can't have it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so when he says, "We love it," it just really, really resonated for me. This is what Chrissy's talking about. "Most of all, I long for death. I know that now. I invited it, a release from the pain of living. My invitation was open to anyone, to the whore at my side, to the pimp that followed, but it was a vampire who accepted." And I just said that, obviously not the vampire part of the pimp or the whore, but you know, parts of my life I've dealt with depression. This is not a very special episode, but when he said that, as he's reminiscing, and he says, "I realized that I invited death, and my invitation was open to anybody." You know, sometimes the destructive behaviors, I'll say, that people manifest are because there's a greater thing, as Chrissy pointed out, because he was depressed over the loss of his wife and child, unborn child, and dealing with my depression bouts of it at certain points, it just resonated with me, and I thought it was a very true statement. So I like that in the script. The companion to that one is when Louis drains him, and he goes, and they're flying up, and he goes, "Do you still want death, or have you tasted it enough?" You know, when you're in the thick of it, you know, and then you realize, oh, it's not as romantic, you know, as you
Right, I
romanticize it
changed my
in your
mind.
mind. Say that again.
Yeah, like I changed my mind.
Yeah. Then he's like, "No more." You know what I mean? And Louis laughs. He says, "Yeah, now you know what you're talking about. Now you want to live, right?" And he just drops him. When Louis is turning, right, and his body is dying, I love this. It's a small thing, just like we love it. Lestat goes to Louis, "Your body's dying. Pay no attention. It happens to us all." Obviously, he's talking about vampires, but also for human beings. It happens to all of us. Why are you afraid now? You know what I mean? Relax. You might as well, you know. Another one. This is what Armand says to Louis. They're having a conversation, and I call this conversation the conversation of whispers and accents. "The world changes. We do not. Therein lies the irony that finally kills us." And then the second part of that is, "Do you know how few vampires have the stamina for immortality? How quickly they perish of their own will?" Those two lines are very, very powerful for me. Chris likes lines that he uses every day. That first one that he says, I could completely see him say it. These I think these are something that I would say if I were an immortal, especially that second one. Do you know how few vampires have the stamina for immortality? How quickly they perish of their own will? When you listen to Armand, even though he has all those vampires who will live forever with him, they don't have any joy of life. They don't have any life in them. They've lost, they're animalistic. And that's what he says to Louis. Whereas you, even in your sorrow, are more alive than them. And I want you to be by my side as a companion to whatever extent. I'll say that's why he has his chauffeur with him, his human. I'll leave it at that because I don't want us to get flagged. Um, I think there are other implications to that, but again, because somebody at that age would be full of life theoretically, right?
Mhm.
And he's drawn to that because he's 400 years old at this point. And so if you thought about it, if you're going to live forever, how long could you hold on to the excitement of it? How many decades? And you don't change. To Chrissy's point, when Claudia cut her hair, she's never going to change. Her hair is going to come back curly the same way all the time. Hence why they don't turn children. I thought that was very cool. I talked about Louis' tears earlier. This is again talking to the interviewer. So vampires can cry. So a vampire can cry. And Louis goes once, maybe twice in his own eternity. I thought that was again profound, and it speaks to after a while you've seen it all. So what am I crying? I've forgotten these people that lived however many years ago. And I think that's why it hurt Louis so much, because he partly created her, right? They were so close, as Chris said, as a father and daughter. Maybe in his head, in some way, she was his daughter, as he says to Armand. And now she's not going to walk through eternity with him, and he's never going to see her again. And all he has is a memory that might fade. If you've ever lost somebody, and I'll speak for myself, sometimes I would call the phone number and their voice was on the answer machine. And I would just call the number just to listen to the voice because I could no longer remember what it sounded like in my head. So I do this as a person who will die at one day. I couldn't imagine living centuries, the pain of that. You might have a tear once or twice, as he said. It's so true. Lastly, this is Louis in the movie theater as he returns to New Orleans, and I thought it was just very profound and just beautifully said. And there, a mechanical wonder allowed me to see the sunrise for the first time in 200 years. And what sunrises, seen as a human eye, could never see them. Silver at first, then as the years progressed in tones of purple, red, and my long-lost blue. I just thought that was very beautiful. And we see the progression of film history while watching a movie. I like film. That was always a favorite scene of mine.
Nice. I will say there was one line that I did write down as he was coming out of the movie theater that really struck me. And it was something along the lines of the beautiful smell of New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. The way he described it.
Yeah, but I've been to New Orleans and I don't know what beautiful smell he's talking about.
I think because it's home.
Yeah, I guess because it was definitely some stank in the air when I was there. But maybe when he was at his time, it was a little different. You're mute, Chris. We can't hear you.
To our listeners and viewers in Louisiana and New Orleans,
y'all know it's stank down there.
Feel that way about your city, and the opinions of C superiors are hers alone. We like our viewers. We like our viewers from all of the globe.
We also like our viewers from New York. When you talk crap,
no, we don't.
And to Chrissy's point, I'll say this. I am from New York. I left in my childhood, and when you go there, obviously, if you're not from there, it smells like a city with a bunch of people that there's trash on the floor and everything like that. Mm-hmm. But in the wintertime, the memory that I have is you can smell the chestnuts from the vendors when you're coming up from the subway. But if you're on the subway, it smells like human.
Yeah.
Pure human. But for me as a child, I don't remember that. And even when I go back, I'm not cognizant of it, even though I'm aware of it. To me, it's the smell of the chestnuts, and I'm wanting to smell that. And that's why I think in the scene that Chrissy's talking about, it looks dirty in New Orleans at that time in the 80s. There's these cops' cars zooming past on the highway overhead. Everything looks run down. But for Louis, that's home. And he hadn't smelled home in forever. So it's always going to be beautiful to him, despite the flaws in it. And I think that's the point.
For somebody sophisticated, you would think that he would be a little smarter because, I mean, DC is technically home for me. When I go back to DC, I smell weed, and it's not a good smell. So that's just me, though. Anyway, so let's go ahead to our next. Let's go to our next segment, which is Recasted. And who would like to go first with this one? Steve, ladies first, or do you want me to go for you? Or
sure.
Malloy want to go? Okay.
Hello, Marky Piat. So I have one recasted, and it was really hard for me to recast this movie, honestly. It was full of gorgeous men, and, you know, as a woman, I love looking at a good-looking man. I'm not ashamed of it. Over there, he's nodding.
You know what? We don't look at movies for the women, so I don't understand why you're
that's a lie.
Sexist, but every review, she's
y'all literally, when we did Hocus Pocus,
attributes of the men. So I just want to point the hypocrisy out, because she's always talking about how the men look. But
when we did Hocus Pocus, all of y'all talk about, oh, this is the best Sarah Jessica Parker ever looked. She was gorgeous in this movie.
I acknowledge the fact that her casting and her wardrobe was well, but I was not talking about her.
That's not what you said.
But every movie, we don't do that.
And I don't do this every movie. I did not do this once.
That's Supreme Cap. That's Supreme Cap.
Supreme Cap.
Go ahead and go. I apologize for interrupting you. Go ahead and acknowledge
a good looking.
Go ahead and Baywatch. Go ahead and Baywatch.
I'm not Baywatching, but I'm sure everyone can agree that this was a good looking cast. So
don't put me in that. Don't put me in that.
I didn't see any good looking women in this movie.
Look, what about the men? Okay, so on to my recast.
Grandma and Black Lightning can get it. Just saying.
Oh yeah, hot girl grandma. But again, I recast. Did find someone to recast, and that was Christian Slater. He did a good job, you know, for the role that he had. I didn't really see anything wrong with what he did, but it also didn't stand out to me either. And I'm not sure if that's because he kind of got his performance got swallowed by like the larger than life characters like Lestat. Mm-hmm. But again, he held his own. So it's not anything against his acting or anything like that. But just because I do have to recast someone, I picked him. And the person I recasted him with, unfortunately, I believe they died the year before this movie came out.
Yeah, a few months or something like that.
Yep. I recasted Christian Slater as River Phoenix. I feel like he has the look that kind of similar but different, and he could kind of fit into the part. So that would be my recasting.
Do you want to tell them why you picked River Phoenix?
I picked him because, again, I feel like he has the look that could fit. And also because he has like this very kind of devil may care attitude that I feel like would kind of complement the other characters.
Okay, I only said that because I was trying to see you. I thought you knew. Huh?
Translation, she gave her answer because she just repeated it and then try to add on.
No. I thought she was aware. That's why she picked it. But originally, River Phoenix was casted to play Christian Slater's role. But as Chrissy said, he died. Yeah, so they recasted it with Christian Slater. But originally, River Phoenix was supposed to play that role. That's why I teed it up. I thought that you knew that.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
No, now she's going to think she's Queen Pen. Let's move on. James,
I'm
you want to take
queen
over?
of recasted.
No, I didn't say you were the queen. I just said I thought you knew that. But
her head is boosted. The ego is up there, and I can't deal with it. We already have one. We have one large enough ego with you, James. We don't need another one. So could you just go ahead?
Hashtag queen of recasted.
Chris, I'll stop you when you tell a lie.
Hashtag queen of recasted. Who's next?
Do you want me to go next, or do you want to go?
I do. Yeah, I do. I'll clean up your tomfoolery because I'm pretty sure I've already seen a few things in there that I already know.
I don't know why. I don't know. Chrissy and Chris, they can't wait for the recasted segment. They gotta look at it ahead of time.
I was looking at mine and I saw.
I've been sending Chris all my 2000 recasted. He's been complaining like every episode. He's been complaining. Do I complain about Chris? Do I bring up the fact that he rolled up the window on that guy asking for a quarter? No, I don't. But he's always complaining about my recasted, right? I don't know what Andrew's talking about.
Malloy. But whiny Malloy. Let's go. Recast it.
But here's my recasted that I uploaded myself. Let's start with yesterday when Chrissy's talking about Prison Bay. This person, Ajax.
Isn't it funny?
Now, if I was on the show, I wasn't. I would have recasted it with Cold Blood. This person is in Iron Man 3. And when you look at him, he just looks like an older version of Ajax. And originally, when Chrissy said she was going to recast Ajax, I thought that's who she was going to pick. But no, because she, again, doesn't sexualize men in every episode, she picked Prison Bay. And then she made some
They look
animalistic
alike.
sound. Go back and watch the episode. But more on
Hold
this
up,
one.
my bad. I thought we were doing
Right.
this movie. We're
Oh,
You're gonna go back and
I
recast.
can't comment
My
on
bad.
anything.
My
I can't
bad.
comment on any episode that we do. But Chrissy slightly brings up Thor: Dark World every couple of episodes. I see what
How?
you did there. I
The
see what you
lies.
did there. Okay, whatever. Anyway,
That's both of y'all.
Cat.
Anyway, let's go back to my interview as both my co-hosts disappear.
Recasted of all the
Let's
videos.
do more of my recasted. Next up is a person as again, I always recast who they look like to me, right? Now, I promise you, I did not know this beforehand, but there's a woman that Chris says is unattractive. I thought that she was attractive. Of course, she has a crying face on right there, but again, I like emotion. I don't mind it per se, put in its place.
Oh, Lord.
Right?
There we go.
No, I mean, I don't want somebody just crying 24/7, but crying because she's about to be eaten. That makes sense. So I understand it, right? And I think this woman is very, very beautiful. Now, I couldn't find her character name, but she plays one of two New Orleans women that Lestat is feeding off of. That's a great scene. Her name is Indra Ove. She's an actress. And when I looked at her, I said, man, she looks exactly like another person that we saw in another movie. This one, Chrissy beat me to it, but it's the stewardess in
What?
Fifth Element. And I said, she looks so much like her. I think it is her. And when I looked it up, it was her. Yes,
What?
Fifth Element, which was made about 3 years later. This is the same actress. And that's why it looks so familiar to me. Okay.
They don't look alike to me. And it's so weird if it's the same person.
It's weird that you call yourself the queen of recasted, but you didn't know who these people were. But anyway.
Do they look alike to you, Chris?
I'm sorry. Is this my turn? Listen. Anyway,
I'm just asking a question.
Your Majesty.
First of all,
Your Majesty.
I see it.
yep.
Not at first glance, but if you really look at the eyes in both of them, you can. I do see it.
You see it. Thank you, Chris, for being fair and honest for this first time. Listen, Chrissy, are you done talking and interrupting my recast, please? Because I don't do this.
Don't think I didn't hear that. Keep going.
I can't give you a compliment. Listen.
As soon as I said the cast was attractive, I couldn't get a word in for like the first 3 minutes of my
And I
recast.
stopped Chris when he interjected. I stopped him. Listen, I have another recasting in this movie, and this scene actually Chris brought up. I have no idea what you're talking about, Chris. This scene Chris actually brought up. Why are you laughing, Chris? This is when Tom Cruise drank from a dead body. Now, in the movie, Lestat says you never feed off of the dead, otherwise you will taste the death, right? And this is the scene that Chris is talking. Chrissy, why are you laughing? This is the scene that Chris is talking about, and Lestat is dying on the floor, and his throat has been cut. And when I saw it, I said, oh. And ladies and gentlemen, you've been asking for this person to come back, and I promised that they would. The person I saw when I saw this was this person right here. Reverend King from Poltergeist 2. Now, you, of course, remember him this way. That's what I look like in the summer when it's 90+% humidity in the DMV. That's what I look like, sweating like crazy. But this is what I was thinking of when I saw, I don't know why tomfoolery, this is called recasting. This is what I was thinking of when I saw Tom Cruise in this one right here. I said, oh, yeah, I've seen this person before. And here he is right there. Okay, they're here. But last but not least, again, as I said, I support UPR Entertainment and the other UPR channels that we have. Salute to them. I don't know their names, but you do. And I went and I watched other episodes. Here's one. I wasn't on. This one is also called Tomfoolery, but also on the bottom is called The Best of Worst of. At that moment, Chrissy's talking about Deadpool being bisexual and Prison Babe being Ajax. And I was confused because she mentions that it's 25-minute mark. You'll know that because right here it says 25:17, I believe. And it's supposed to be recasted. But if you look closely, it has the banner of Best of Worst of. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, when I'm not on the show, the mics will play. And that is the last of my recast.
The hate. So about 50% of the recasted was the recasted from the last episode.
I don't want to miss anything with UPR Entertainment.
And then the other part, okay. I'll take it. I'll continue to wear the crown as the queen of recasted. Thank you very much for proving
All
me
right,
right.
half to the side. Get rid of that. We're going right into my recasted. This person that I wanted to recast in this movie. Why? Because in this movie, I mentioned a couple weeks ago about Bebe's Kids and that woman being the most evil character in movies in the 90s. Then I come across Claudia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Claudia, you are the queen of evil. All right, you see the spirit, queen of recasted, bullcrap, queen of evil. Claudia, you are it. You showed me so much in this movie about how you are the devil. I almost recasted you as Damien in Omen because you could play it all. You played it that well. But I also saw you being groomed for another evil villain in the 2000s.
Here we go.
That you ironically played. And I see why you got that role because you played it so well. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to talk about one manipulator? We're going from Claudia to Miss Mary Jane Watson from Spider-Man.
What?
That's right. Mary Jane Watson from Spider-Man was just as evil as Claudia. Why? Claudia was the daughter of two men who she manipulated and she manipulated and she tried to twist into fighting each other and themselves. I got people's throats slit. You know, I got people drinking blood. She's turning into dust. You know, like she got snapped by Thanos. You know, it was amazing. Thank God she didn't glitter, right? But then I'm like, well, why Mary Jane? Mary Jane didn't do that. Are you telling me that she was not the daughter of two men taking care of her when they were Peter Parker and what's the other kid's name? Yes. That's what Mary Jane was doing. Manipulating both of them. Oh, yeah, I'm going to be with you. Oh, I'm going to flirt around. You want to come to my thing? Oh, by the way, I'm engaged. You know, this is what she was doing. This is what she was doing. So I see why you got this role. You played two roles manipulative, very manipulative, and you deserve. That's of course you don't. I can see why you would think Claudia was evil. But I will say this. When we get to the Spider-Man series, which will be sometime in 2023, when we get to the Spider-Man series, this is my Mary Jane.
Mm-hmm.
She's evil to the core, but this is my Mary Jane. She played the best one. Of course, there's only like one other one, and I don't know what the heck she was. So that's it right there. We're going to go to our last.
Wait, before you go, let me end on a quote from one of your favorite characters. Mark puts up, let's review 2 Men and a Baby. Chris, here's the quote. We already are.
We are. But isn't it 3 Men and a Baby?
I don't think you got it.
No, that's the movie that you watched, Chrissy. That's the movie that you watched.
I swear it was 3 Men and a Baby.
All right.
We know, and we know the hub that you watched.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a small commercial break. We'll be, oh, here she goes with her fat shaming women. All right, we'll be right back after this brief commercial break.
New Line Cinema presents Ryan Gosling, Rachel McAdams, James Garner, Jenna Rollins, James Marsden with Sam Shepard and Joan Allen in a Nick Cassavetes film.
I read to her and she remembers.
The Notebook.
Let me start on that.
Go on, Barry.
And we're back. And we'll later in the week or next week, we're going to be reviewing the best movie we have ever reviewed in UPR history, The Notebook. So join us for that. I believe we're doing that on Tuesday.
Yes.
It'll be a great love story, a great love affair. Grab your significant other and join us for that. But in the meantime, we're talking about Interview with the Vampire.
Thursday.
We'll be talking about that. But now we're going into our final segment, I believe, which is final thoughts.
I'm so sorry to our viewers that we have to actually review this horrific movie. Like you see some men on the show and you think like, oh my God, they have testosterone. But this woman, just like everything behind the scenes, is running the world. So now we watch this piece of crap of a movie next week. I thought we could. I'd rather watch Casper 2 times over than watch this movie. And C won't let me out of it. She won't let me out of it. It's next Thursday, by the way. The week after we're switching to Tuesday and Thursday. It's next Thursday.
Oh, Thursday wait, okay.
Wait, it's not this Thursday coming up?
It's next Thursday. Well, this Thursday coming up. Yeah, this Thursday coming up. If you want to, whichever. Look, today's the 4th. On the 11th is The Notebook.
Okay.
The 11th is The Notebook. On the 9th is Logan. Either way, get a box of tissues. Get a box of tissues. Mark UPR, who's speaking for I Am Groot, thumbs down for next Thursday, has already given this movie a thumbs up. Let's go ahead. See the Superior. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Final thoughts. We're going to do this quick.
All right, final thoughts about this movie. I just wanted to say before I get in my final thoughts that it is 3 men and a baby. Just so we ended with facts.
And for those who want to watch that movie, what website did you watch that on?
What do you mean? I just opened up your browser history, and that's what it came up as, James.
Yeah, okay.
So final thought about this movie. Spoiler alert, I loved it. I love this movie. I snuck and watched it when I was younger. I snuck and I read the books. I wasn't allowed to, but I read them anyway. And they were all fantastic. Well, not all the books were fantastic, but this book was really good. I do want to say that, again, the cast was really well selected. I believe Tom Cruise stole the show, but how could you not steal the show with a character like Lestat? Very great character. And kudos to Anne Rice for being such a fantastic writer. But I will say, I mentioned earlier in the show that there will be another set of vampires that will be brought up later in the episode. And I'm going to bring it up now because these vampires in this series are some of the most flamboyant, theatrical, effeminate, sexually fluid vampires I've ever seen. But yet, for whatever reason, they're deemed more manly than the Cullens, than the Twilight vampires. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why. And I believe it has something to do with it being like a love story. This story isn't a love story. It's kind of just like of course, it's an interview. It's someone's life, their description. But Twilight is a love story, and I feel like it is not as well written. I'm not comparing one book to the other. I'm just comparing the vampires. And it doesn't make sense to me why one vampire who's, again, I guess he sparkles, but he's very much, I guess, masculine in his characteristics. Yeah.
Who are you talking about now? You're talking about Edward is masculine in the
Edward is masculine in his description. And if you compare him to the description of Lestat and the way that the character is, Lestat was written as flamboyant. He was written as sexually fluid. He was written as very theatrical. And if you're being stereotypical with gender roles and how they are assigned to certain genders, Edward is more stoic written. He's more, I guess, like the thinker, like the silent, like he doesn't have many words, and you would assume that that's more placed onto manly characters, if you want to say it like that. But anyway, I digress. Thumbs up for this movie. Great film all the way around.
Now, Chrissy, we have a little bit more time. I'm very curious because I want to understand where you're coming from. Your question is, why is are you comparing all the vampires in Interview with the Vampire, or like Louie, let's say, compared to Edward's character in the Twilight series? Why one is acceptable to males? You're saying?
Yeah, pretty much all of the vampires, like the vampires in the Vampire Chronicles and the vampires in the Twilight Saga. Why? I don't understand why one is considered like less manly than the others. Like
even though in Interview with the Vampire, they're doing more sexually fluid things.
Yeah, and they're more feminine and they're, exactly. I don't see the sense in it as far as the comparison of one being.
That's a very good question.
Thank you. But who would like to go next? James?
Chris usually closes out the show. Vic is not here, but he says he gives it a thumbs up. for tonight's episode, as does Mark, as does Clifton. I'm going to answer your question later. Maybe the answer will come to me as I go down these things. Final thoughts on this movie. I think this is arguably one of the best, if not the best, vampire films. Why do I couch that? There's another movie called Let the Right One In. Now, that's the Swedish original of Let den rätt komma in, of the book Let the Right One Come In. That's the translation of it. Now, I'm not talking about the American version, Let Me In, but Let the Right One In. That one, if you watch that movie, is also a very slow burn film. But I like it because it goes into the vampire lore. As I said earlier, there are certain things that I like about this movie because it goes into the vampire lore. I believe that there is however small, there is a community of vampires. They have certain rules. They have certain taboos. They are different from us. And that's why I like this movie so much. We talked about the stellar acting somewhat. Of course, you could talk about the entire episode. I thought they all did a phenomenal job, whether they whispered it or shot it or were over the top. They were great. I think Andrew says that Armand's character that Antonio Banderas played was phenomenal. I'm going to get into that in a second, and I'll couple that with Lestat and even with Louie. And we mentioned this with Claudia. I like the fact that this movie establishes certain vampire lore that, generally speaking, is carried through in other vampire films. Even if the vampires look different, even if they act differently or whatever like that, there's certain rules that this movie established. If you want to say the book, fine, okay? And as far as the TV show, even True Blood, and for me personally, I very much like the way those vampires are depicted, because you see a lot of those with these vampires in this movie as far as their characteristics, right? I like that when the people, because obviously they're Hollywood attractive before they were turned. We never see Lestat before he was turned into a vampire, right? So let's take Louie, right? Brad Pitt's character. But when they're bitten and they drink the blood and they turn, they're almost glamorized, right? Why is that? Because they're a predatory animal. Who is their prey? Their prey is humans. Humans, more than anything, I know we kid Chrissy, but more than anything, we are drawn to what is attractive to us, right? Even if it's to pick out a piece of fruit or a vegetable, we don't want the one that's banged up. We want the most attractive one, even though we're going to chop it up. Mm-hmm. It has to be visually appealing. I like that the predator would be visually appealing to the prey so that we become close to it. I like that there's an elegance to the character. That just like, but they're also dangerous, right? I like that Louie has angst, and as they establish, because he lost something that we can relate to. I can relate to that, right? As Christian Slater asked him one time, "What did you see when you first became a vampire?" He says, "How could I explain it to you in a way that you would understand?" So he tells him a couple of things, but of course it didn't make sense to him, and it doesn't make sense to us. How can a statue seem to move and not move, right? As he said, these are things you could never know, right? But the angst of losing your wife and your child, I never want to feel that pain personally. It's something tangible that I can relate to. Whereas, and this is getting into Chrissy's point, whereas when I watched Twilight, because I wasn't on that episode, and even the subsequent films, it's more what I would describe as emo-ish. Now, again, if that's your thing, whatever, right? It's just not my thing. Whereas in this movie, Louis seemed to want to hold on to his humanity. As he says to Armand, even if my humanity consists only of my pain, I'd rather have that than travel the world with you as a vampire, right? Leave me my pain. That's all I have. It reminded me of a scene in Star Trek V that Chris knows that I bring up sometime. I need my pain, right? And I think for a lot of guys, yes, obviously it's because Robert Pattinson has been portrayed as just a pretty boy. I'm not saying that he's not a good actor, that I'm not saying that at all. Actually, I think he does transform into different roles. But I think the character was written, at least on the screen, as just a pretty boy. And that's why Bella is drawn to him, because he's pretty, not because there's substance behind it. As Chrissy says, he's just kind of quiet and is more cerebral, but we can't hear his thoughts in a visual medium. Maybe in the book is different. I don't know, because obviously there's a third person omniscient, right? Or he might narrate that chapter, but there's none of that. In this one, we see why and we hear why from the character in Interview with the Vampire, why he's like that, right? And to me, it makes sense that I'm not saying that every guy who watches this, and maybe they do, but I think that they more gleam onto the fact that Lestat or any of these vampires could do whatever they want to do, and nobody could say different, right? And it makes more sense that they would be sexually fluid, because why should they hold to the human, if you're going to call them mores, or the human conceptions of sex that we do, or that they did in the 19th century or whatever like that? They wouldn't, right? Armand, from our point of view, it looks like he's sexually attracted to Louie, right? And I mentioned even his human companion. That's how I would describe it. But the way he talks to Louie, I want you around simply because you have some fragment of your humanity, and I don't have that anymore. And I want that, attracts me to you. That makes you beautiful to me. That's what he says, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lestat, whereas it's the good life with Louie, right? And as he says, the harder you fought me, the more I wanted you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so cut and dry. Whereas in Twilight, again and again and again, it's reiterated that he's attractive. There's something about them that makes them look attractive, and I want him, and I can't sleep with them, and everything like that. But they seem to perfect rather than being dirty and grimy, like this one shows. Even though Lestat is fluid in his sexuality, he goes there. He's dangerous. He's a threat. And I think that's why maybe some guys, they don't like that, for all the different reasons that I said. As far as this movie goes, obviously it's a thumbs up for me.
Nice.
All right, so a few points I want to mention out is Tom Cruise killed it, Lestat killed it, stole every scene. I love people who are stealing scenes. It's a good story that was told. Everybody killed it. I didn't really need to recast anybody because everybody killed it. Quotes galore. I mean, that's good for me. So thumbs up from me, ladies and gentlemen. Thumbs up from me. And I really wish I could play the piano while I was doing that, so you can see how much I love this movie. All right, ladies and gentlemen, next week, I want you to make sure you join on Tuesday. We have Logan. And on Thursday, we have for you The Notebook. I don't even know where the thumbnail is. I'll probably get rid of it. All right, for the saddest week in UPR history, we have Logan and The Notebook. But we're coming down on our X-Men movies.
James has his notebook ready. The Notebook already. Look at it, right on brand.
After Logan, we only have 3 more X-Men movies before we get into our next series. And of course,
yes,
it's going to go into a different series from there. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching us. Make sure if you're a fan of us that you like, love, and share this, as well as subscribe to our YouTube, Twitch, whatever platform that you're watching. If you like this movie, if you like this movie, give this movie a thumbs up on YouTube or Facebook or whatever like that. If you didn't like it, don't give it a thumbs down, but go ahead and let us know in the comments why you did not like this movie, because I'm curious to know your opinion of this movie and every movie going forward. For Malloy, for C the Superior, for Mark UPR, who's conspicuous by his absence but was in his comments, go figure. I am the executive consultant. Thanks so much for watching us, and we will see you next time right here on Unpopular Review. Good night, everybody.